Nice to see you. Thanks for coming out. This is the second in a three-part series of programs we're giving that are specifically focusing on female identifying composers. And, as artistic director, it's really been a lot of fun, a wonderful opportunity for me to have a little dedicated time to dive in a little bit more fully, not only into the music, but of course, for me, it's in a way more compelling, like the personalities. And I'm a big believer in, if I can get some kind of understanding of the particular person in the particular place at a particular time within a given set of circumstances, and how that shapes the music that's created, that's something that's really sort of fun, and it helps me understand where a lot of this music that I'm interested in and that I continue to discover, like where it comes from, and oftentimes it's not at all what I would think on initial listenings. So if you look, we have these notes, these brief notes about the three composers, and we'll sort of go through each one and then hear some illustrations, musical illustrations. All three of these, in my own opinion, are real agents of change within their particular cultures, in particular at the times that they were actively writing. Stefania Turkevich, she immediately, as she began to become more widely known, first in Kiev and then beyond, she immediately got into hot water with the Soviet authorities because she was not really in line. She was very interested in trying to champion a Ukrainian identity and sort of like a musical sensibility that really would reflect a lot of Ukrainian folklore, and as we see now, there's still a good bit of tension around that whole relationship, right? And so, she was able to eke out a career for herself as a teacher, and apparently she was a very gifted piano teacher, but also theory and composition. But immediately after the Second World War, it was clear to her and a number of other Ukrainian musicians that they were going to need to probably try to leave. So in 1946, she immigrated first to Italy, stayed there for about a year and a half, and then landed in England. And it was really there that she made a wonderful name for herself. Actually, the song that we're going to hear, Sweet and Low, is one of a very small set of songs that she actually set to English text, English poetry. And the reason was, at this particular time in the 60s, when she was writing these songs, she wanted to try to become as fully rooted in English sort of artistic circles as possible. So she was trying to create lots of avenues for herself to do that. And she even, in this particular song, she does a little bit of an homage to British composer Benjamin Britten. And for me, I have a love-hate relationship with English music in general, because you've got Purcell and Handel way back in the day, and then you've got Benjamin Britten, who's probably one of the most brilliant musical minds of the 20th century. And then, I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but it's sort of like an abyss for several hundred years in between those two poles, right? And so Stefania was a real, in the best possible sense, I feel, a chameleon, because she was able to sort of work stylistically with various influences, including those that were really happening in England at that time, post Second World War. And so, you can see from the variety of music that she wrote. She was an incredibly gifted composer and musical thinker. But when I've been looking into this, apparently it was the operettas that she wrote for children that really put her on the map. And I was listening to some of these, and they're absolutely brilliant. And it gave her yet another opportunity to fold in to these stage works elements of traditional Ukrainian folklore. Even like some old Ukrainian mythological characters. And so, you know, she never really gave up at all her Ukrainian roots. As a matter of fact, I think being in Britain at that time provided her with a platform to really sort of champion Ukrainian musical identity. And so, you know, she was sort of a big deal. And two, I think it's notable that she is the first woman from the western part of Ukraine now that used to be Polish or Lithuanian or like whoever was doing it at the time, Lviv, to get a PhD. She was the first woman to get a doctorate. So, you know, she was a real trailblazer in a lot of ways. So AJ and I are working on this song and we want to share it with you. There's one little illustration that I thought I might use in terms of her style. At this particular point in the 20th century, you know, we're accustomed to hearing standard like harmonies, you know, those types of sounds. And she became very interested in developing a little bit different type of language, and this is very Benjamin Britten-like in a lot of ways, but basing her harmony sounds on sounds that are a little more widely spaced, right? Like those kinds of sounds. Bela Bartok, for instance, Hungarian composer, you just love this kind of, you know, things built in fourths and fifths, as did Benjamin Britten, as did Stefania. And there's this really neat little melodic line that the piano has about a third of the way through the song, and the melody's like this. And so it has that melodic line, but then what she's starting to do in the background is to first create some kind of accompanying bass line, right? So there, in the bass line, what she's actually doing is including quite a number of blue notes. So there is a jazz-inspired element to that, but then she puts in the middle of this texture between melody and bass line, she starts to have this little undulating line figure, right? And so in the middle, it's sort of like the goopy stuff in the middle of the Oreo, you get that. So that gives you a little more sense of motion and texture, but while she's doing that, she's also incorporating quite a number of those sounds in the background, right? So do I expect you to like be aware of all of that stuff? No, but it is sort of interesting, like when you take a little snippet trying to understand the particular style of a composer, what makes their music sound the way it does. And if you can begin to just dissect it a little bit into various elements and then reconstruct them and ask yourself the question, okay, after I've sort of taken this apart just a little bit and put it back together, do I listen to it any differently? Do I perceive the music any differently, right? And since I'm something of both a theory and history geek, I just sort of tend to do that. So thank you for being my captive audience. You want to do the song? Now, keep in mind, this is a lullaby. And I guess by the end, you're sort of feeling lulled at the end.
Yes, yeah. It's almost like the contrast makes those moments of resolution mean that much more. It's kind of like a mother rocking a child that won't calm down quite yet, and then in that moment of rest at the end, it's like, oh, that's really lovely. You get the contrast.
Teething anyone? Yes. Chiquinha Gonzaga. I first came across her music about 17, 18 years ago. For about 5 or 6 year period of time, I was very involved in a local chamber music organization that focused on music from Central and South America. So I got to know her music really well, and boy is she fun. I think actually her life story is one of the reasons why so much of her music is so colorful. Because talk about being an agent of change and sort of having certain like stars align that would allow for other things to happen. just an absolutely fascinating story. So, her mother, Rosa, was a mestizo slave, and she became pregnant by Chiquinha's father, Jose, and he actually decided to go ahead and marry Rosa and claim Chiquinha as his daughter. That was really quite uncommon in Brazil at that time for that kind of thing to happen. So what that meant was that Chiquinha was able to have a really, really good education, including, of course, piano lessons. And so I think that really gave her a wonderful outlet for her own growth. To this point that I referenced, Brazil at this time really was sort of like the financial and cultural capital of what was like the Portuguese Empire at that time. And even with Rio being a fairly cosmopolitan city, especially the more that you move through the end of the 19th century, it was particularly backwards in terms of opportunities and roles for women at that time. And so what Chiquinha ended up doing, she married a naval officer, right, which I think sort of afforded her an opportunity to pursue a lot of the things musically that she was interested in. After having had 3 kids with this officer, apparently she was presented with an ultimatum, by her husband. It's either me or it's music. And apparently, her older daughter said that Chiquinha simply said, "I can't understand life without harmony." And so she ended up causing a tremendous scandal in Rio at that time. Her father disowned her as a result of seeking divorce. But then the most wonderful thing happened. The entire arts community, and keep in mind, by this time, Rio was a real hotbed, like a lot of the, touring European opera companies or symphonies or whatever. I mean, they were all going to Rio, so there was a lot of stuff going on. So the Rio Brazilian arts culture really embraced Chiquinha and initially took care of her, and then what that resulted in was the creation of, and of course, you can see that she was able to compose very fluently in lots of different styles, and also was very interested in not only creating and championing, but really moving forward like a Brazilian national musical identity, right? Which is why she had such great success with her operas, because I think a lot of people were getting sick of Italian opera, and there's only so much Wagner and Verdi, apparently, that one can stand. And so what Chiquinha decided to do was to draw on Brazilian folk lore, folk elements, the same kind of thing that Stefania was doing, Chiquinha was doing, and because there were these Brazilian characters in opera for the very first time, I mean, she couldn't keep people out of the theaters, So what she was able to do was to create a really great, not only name for herself, but an income for herself that then gave her freedom and control to really do what she wanted to do musically. And so one of the things that she first really developed was this type of music, Brazilian, called choro, right? And it's somewhat analogous to American blues in terms of it being a hybrid musical form, sort of like a fusion of different elements, right? And so one of the aspects that American blues and Brazilian choro have in common is a really significant African element, right? Usually dance rhythms. And so what you've got in this first piece, Bione, which is a great example of choro music, well, you just have a really happy little tune. Right, so it's just very happy, but there is also this European influence which makes itself known in terms of the harmonies that we're actually hearing. because they're not very complicated at all. They would feel like very, very familiar. Very standard harmonic language, right? But that's not what makes Shoro Shoro, because it's sort of the rhythmic element that really drives and then defines the musical style. Isn't that fun? So that's the rhythm that's sort of underlying all of this, and it is that rhythmic identity that really defines what Shoro is. And Shoro is by design an absolutely wonderful musical form because, of course, I mean, you can play it by yourself, but it's really meant to be played in group settings, right? And so you can get, 2 to 22 people, and you can just learn a Shoro tune and play it. And that's one of the wonderful things about Brazilian music making. You just like go out on a street corner and start playing something, and then like everybody comes and they want to start playing, right? I mean, that's just sort of what they do. So this music is meant to champion all of that. All right, so this is the Bione. And so, if you wanted to go to a local Rio dive bar, and if she was there, she would be playing Shoro, probably with 15 other people as well. One other illustration I wanted to offer was this tango, the Sospiro. There was, at this time, a little bit of a competition between, of course, Argentinian composers, this tango for heaven's sake, and Brazilians. And it seems that the Argentinians said, well, we can really dance this much better than Brazilians can, but then the Brazilians tended to think, yeah, but we write better music and we feel our emotions more deeply, right? And so there was a little bit of a, sort of a friendly World Cup qualifying relationship between Argentina and Brazil. She does a very similar thing in terms of developing this, because you have like her tango tune, stagnant. So the rate of speed at which the harmonies are changing is a pretty slow rate of speed, right? And we actually call that harmonic rhythm. So there's the rhythm that we're playing in the actual like metrical rhythm of the music, right? But then there's this other category of rhythm, like harmonic rhythm, and sometimes those two things don't necessarily line up to complement each other. Sometimes if you have, like for instance in the case of this piece, you have a relatively slow harmonic rhythm, and then you have the tango rhythm sort of going with that. What that does is create like a really interesting, at least to my ears, an interesting backdrop of like suspense, right? And you're not always exactly sure what's going to happen, but you're really enjoying it when it's like moving through the various sections. Have you ever, has anybody ever asked you, like, okay, if you were able to go have dinner with, like, a person, like, no matter when or where that person lived, like, who would that person be? And I think for me it'd be Chiquinha Gonzaga, just because, there's so much dish and everything that she went through, but also I think just to hear her play Choro, and just to really feel what that felt like at that time. And I think too, her having eventually this huge platform, it allowed her to become the first woman to conduct an orchestra in Brazil. And that was a really big deal. I mean, it's a big deal now, but it was a huge deal at that time. And so her footprint in Brazilian musical history is just tremendous. So you should listen to some of Chiquinho's music. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of choices too. All right, now en français. Germaine Taillefer. I think I've never run across a person who was like her temperament apparently was such that she just loved being a maverick. She just loved being sort of a little thorn in the French cultural side. In this wave of nationalism that really started to happen all across Europe and in America too, because did you notice in some of the Vione, of course, Chiquinho was developing choro at the same time Scott Joplin was developing ragtime. They're doing the same thing. It's just that Scott Joplin is boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, and Chiquinho's boom bum 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 bum. Right? But other than that, I mean, sit them in a room and they'll write choro and ragtime together, So I don't think, because I was trying to figure out, did these people meet? I mean, they must have met. I mean, there's no way that they could be basically doing the same kind of thing, but no, they never met. And so I think it was some kind of thing that was going on. It was very exciting. So there was a huge reaction in French music starting around the beginning of the 20th century, surprise, surprise, against Germanic influences, right? And, what that initially resulted in was the visual art, the whole impressionistic thing, visual art starting to craft a more specific French artistic identity. Then a lot of the poets followed suit quickly because these guys were all hanging out in bars together, and so they were all they saw themselves as basically doing the same thing just with different media. And then you had the development of we call it Impressionism. I think Claude Debussy referred to it as symbolism, where he was trying to not only, in a way, push back. I mean, it was Wagner. It was just everything was Wagner. Against that Germanic influence, but also at that time to sort of open the door to other cultural influences. So one of the things that Debussy began to work with, of course, was the whole tone scale. I mean, you're listening to Debussy, right? And it's a lot of that. In addition to, at that time, what was called Oriental influences, the 5-note pentatonic scale, right? And so Debussy incorporated a lot of those sounds, as did Maurice Ravel, but it was specifically Debussy that really tried to set a French course. And then after the First World War, there was this period of time where the younger generation wanted nothing to do with anybody or anything and all of that. And so not only did they want to push back against Wagner, but they wanted to push back against Debussy and symbolism as well, right? So they wanted to jettison that whole thing. We need to define a new French identity. Enter the composer Erik Satie. And this man had some very interesting ideas. And, as you can see, it's this idea that music should sort of be really accessible pretty much to everybody. And it doesn't need to be so hoity-toity and in big concert halls only to be considered worthwhile music, right? And so he coined this term everyday music. And he really had a huge influence on the younger generation, especially those students at the Paris Conservatoire at that time. And so they started to actually form their own their own club, Les Six, and really think about this. And they work together collaboratively for a good 8 to 10 years. But then they all sort of went their own separate directions. And it's interesting, like choices that they then made as they went through their careers. And I mean, if you look at the span of time that Taillefer Fair was composing, 1909 to 1983, I mean, she wrote a lot of music, and I think, she saw a lot of things, and actually wrote in a number of different styles. And so these songs that we're going to hear, I just love them. I think they're great songs on their own. You can see we've got the translations here on a separate page, and I've never run I can't recall that I have a composer that was just fine with airing her dirty laundry in public, because that's what this is. She had just divorced her husband, and she was sort of letting everybody know not only why she didn't like him so much, but she really liked her new lover a lot better. And let me tell you all about it, right? And so there's a lot of that, and apparently if you look at where these 6 poems are coming from, I mean we've got quite a span. 15th century, we've got Voltaire, we've got so she must have taken a lot of care to curate these poems in this particular order, right? As a little sort of autobiographical sketch. I mean, AJ, you're singing them, so you can explain them.
It's been fun and somewhat exhausting to work on these because of the way that they're laid together. There's very often you finish one song and you need just a second to immediately flip into the new tone world and emotional world that happens. Yeah.
She may very well have been bipolar. I wanted to give like one little illustration. Right? I want to take the very opening phrase of the 4th song. The 4th song, because in the same way that Stefania and Cecchina make choices about what musical elements to combine and what kind of style they would like to create, she's doing a very similar thing. You want to sing this? This is a very nice melody. And then, in the background, from a realistic, more bare bones perspective, all right, she's doing a very, again, sort of a static sound that's based on Your Friend and Mine, the Perfect Fifth. All right, so you want to? Yeah. All right, so you have that very fixed sound, right? And you hear the nice melody going against it. But, of course, jazz was all the rage in Paris, especially between the 2 world wars. The Paris, they were just flocking, right? So she's including blue notes in a lot of the motion that she has going on. So now let's sort of like do the thing. But you can hear we have some slightly dissonant sounds, but they're actually jazz blue notes that she's incorporating into her music. So, very clever composer. Would you say?
Yeah, very.
Anything else you would like to warn the studio audience about before we go?
I might spit a little bit. There's a lot of text in some of these, so watch out.
Yeah, a lot of French. A lot of French.
A lot of fast French, so I'll do my best. Non, 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 fidélité, moi je m'étais comme mon bestialité, je quittais ma négridité, et d'une beauté, fille de
Mon mari battait famille pour l'amour d'un bon ami, de la longue démarrée que je fêtais avec lui. Et mon ami, il oublie que mon mari, une fois toujours battant, je verrai pire que devant. A cogner Jean mon premier, disant que je fais d'amis, la chose entre forme de rire, montre grâce et ceci. Et mon ami, au dépit de mon mari, une fois de peu de blanc, je verrai pire que devant.
having a never-ending front seat at one's divorce proceeding. Let's welcome Rachel and Veronica. So with this trio, you can see that she wrote it, you know, relatively close to the time that she was jettisoning her husband, but then went back in the late 1970s, revisited it, and revised it, and made some changes. Now, of course, what I would be interested in was, all right, can I have a copy of the original? So I can see, you know, like what choices she was making, because you know, that's quite a span of time, and so you're a different person, therefore you're a different musician and composer, you know, much later. So I would love to have had access to that kind of thing. I just want to ask the two of you, like, what do you love about this trio? I love a lot about this trio. Rachel, I bet you love a couple of things about this trio.
So kind of throwing me on the spot. I guess the thing is like, I've been playing the violin since I was 3, and I grew up in a family where we were always listening to music. So I don't remember, like, my favorite pieces, I don't remember hearing them the first time. You know what I mean? Like, I've been like, oh, Tchaikovsky Concerto, I love that piece. I have no idea when I heard it the first time, and I don't have that memory of like, wow, this is so cool. But I guess like, a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, I programmed this piece for a different concert, and I was like looking for music specifically by women composers, and I just like found a YouTube video where this piece was being performed, and it was, I heard it and immediately fell in love, like instantly, like love at first sight, but with music. And I don't have, since I listened to so much music when I was little, like I don't get to have those experiences as much of like finding a true love piece. So yeah, this is really special to me because yeah, it's a love at first listen sight piece. Yeah.
I think the thing that I really enjoy about this piece is also the thing that stresses me out the most, but her use of the cello is a bit more bold at times than other composers in piano trios, and in particular putting the cello quite up high and like right up in the violin range as well, but the result, it's so cool. It's so cool, and a lot of times it's in like a very pentatonic moment, and she's creating, she's using those harmonies that Rick was referencing with Debussy, but she's also creating a different balance and different sound altogether, putting the cello so high with the violin, and it happens, but it's not that common. Or the cello will be up high and everybody else kind of gets out of the way so the cello can shine. But this is like, actually, you're going to pretend you're a violin for 12 measures. Good luck. I think it's really cool. It's difficult, but cool.
Rachel, you just like jogged a memory. like first musical love. So, being totally transparent, I did not hear my first live orchestral concert until the summer of 1981. at the Eastern Music Festival in North Carolina. I just finished my sophomore year in college. Ooh, bad parents. And the thing that I heard was Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. I don't know if you've ever had to listen to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. So there's this crazy, like honest to God, crazy little Swiss conductor, about 5 feet nothing with Einstein here, right? And they flew him in just to conduct Rite of Spring. Okay, I had never, like, not only heard any like orchestral music, but I had never even imagined that anything like this could be created and to use like an orchestral ensemble in the ways that Stravinsky does. And so after that concert was over, we were just talking about sleep paralysis the other day, right? So yeah, so you're right. If you've ever had like sleep paralysis, okay, I had like music paralysis. I could not form coherent sentences for about half an hour. I just had to go sit in a corner for a while after I heard that. So some of these musical experiences, especially when they're young, Rachel, that's a brilliant point. Have like such huge impacts on our lives. And I think you talk to any like musician or whatever, I mean, everybody's got their story. to say thank you because I always forget these things, and thank goodness it's in the program. Trevor Patches, our American Family Insurance agent, he's sponsoring us this year, and also the City of Evanston Arts Council. And they have actually, they have been so supportive of this specific series, this Women Composer series. And I'm really, you know, I think it's a great example of what a marriage between a city and the arts should actually be. You know, so we're really fortunate because 98% of this country is not. So, you know, I'm preaching to the choir. But before I let you guys go get some yummies, I had a great meeting with somebody that you guys need to know about if you don't know about it. An old friend of mine, Dr. Nina Kraus, she's in the, she's a biologist. She's in the communications department at Northwestern. She has been at the forefront of experimentation and data gathering, and also sort of like using her research, reaching out to communities in terms of music study for over 25 years now. She's doing some incredible work. There is these little cards outside on the table. You should get, it has her website on it. And if you're interested, just if you're having auditory issues, she's got that kind of information. If you're interested in what's actually going on, the hard science that music teachers have been saying for the last 4,000 years, yeah, it makes you smarter. Now she has the actual science. We know why, right? And so she has some really cool PowerPoints showing what's actually going on in the brain. And for those of you parents or adult musicians who are studying, she has actually found, apparently, like the magical cutoff line. After you reach this line in terms of continuous music study, the brain will retain all of those connections throughout the lifetime of the individual or of the brain, and you can continue to build. 5 years is the minimum, and that's not taking summers off. So that's the equivalent of 5 years, and it doesn't have to be, you know, but it's sort of like that aggregation of time, right? And repetition. The brain craves repetition, right? And so that's why this whole thing can be so wonderful. So grab one of these cards and go check her website out, and then go donate to them as well, because like all of her stuff, it's not funded by NU. Her salary is, but their research is not. And you know, the cool thing that she's doing now, then I'll shut up, is Northwestern, the athletics department, she's doing some research into concussion protocols and how music can be used as a therapeutic device, right? So she literally has all like 473 student athletes on the Northwestern campus that are participating in this. So it's all across all sports, you know. And she's finding that there's some fascinating things going on, especially with subconcussive hits. Not full-blown, but it's actually the aggregation of subconcussive hits that causes